Welcome to the show. This is Terry Tucker. Terry Tucker is an international podcast guest on the topics of motivation, self-development, and mental health. He has a business administration degree from the Citadel, where he played NCAA Division I college basketball, and a master's degree from Boston University. In his professional career, Terry has been a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, and an undercover narcotics investigator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a high school basketball coach, a business owner, a motivational speaker, and for the past 10 years, a cancer warrior. He is the author of Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. Terry has also been featured in Authority, Global Thrive, and Human Capital Leadership magazines. He and his wife have lived all over the United States and currently reside in Colorado with their Wheaton Terrier, Maggie. In 2019, Terry started the website Motivational Check to help others find and lead their uncommon and extraordinary lives. So that's a lot of things, you've experienced and things. So, just to start off, what experiences have you really learned from just all these things that, you've done, all these jobs, all these coaching and everything?
Well, Brendan, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
Yes.
I've learned so much. I mean, everything from, I as you mentioned, I played basketball down at the Citadel. I'm 6'8" tall. I've got a brother that's 6'7" who pitched for the University of Notre Dame, and I have another brother who's 6'6" who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So I sort of joked that, if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on. But, our 5'8" mother was the boss. So, our parents really taught us the importance of family and supporting each other and caring for each other and loving each other and stuff like that. I certainly learned that. I learned, team sports. I started playing basketball when I was 9 years old and played all the way up till I graduated from the Citadel. And one of the things I think you learn from team sports, regardless of what sport it is the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. You realize that if you don't do your job on the team, not only do you let yourself down, but you let, your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, etc. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life. So, I have learned so many things. I could go on for hours about, what I've learned from cancer, what I've, learned when I was in law enforcement and things like that. But, certainly family and the importance of being part of something bigger than yourself are two very important things that I've learned in my life.
And that's really good. It's like how you were saying, that family structure, like how you said with basketball, saying things like, being bigger things and bigger, that's what it is, that's really good, and, for me being a guest on another person's podcast, and just doing live streams with the other guests, that's like how you said, having a big, group, and then, you're in something that's bigger than what you are and what your brand can be. So really like that. So, entrepreneurship, what really got you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it was really kind of happenstance. Circumstances sort of led to it. I had to get out of law enforcement because my wife has always been the primary breadwinner. She lost her job when we were living in Cincinnati, and we had to move to Texas, and she found a job down there. So, here I was kind of, in my late 40s. Now, what do I do with my life? And, I have an undergraduate degree, I have a master's degree. I've been to law school. I had all this experience in training on the SWAT team and in police. So I thought, maybe starting a school security consulting business to help schools around the United States to be more safe and more secure was something I could try. And, I'd never had my own business before. I'd worked in other organizations, but, that was all a learning curve for me. As in, I think every time we switch, whether we switch schools, whether we switch jobs, whatever it is, there's a learning curve.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, what skills do I bring to the table? And it's interesting. When a couple of years ago, I read a book called, it was written by a man by the name of James Kerr. And it's about the New Zealand national rugby team. And they are, by all accounts, probably the most successful sports franchise in any sport in any country of all times. And one of the things that they talk about when they hire people is, and I don't know anything about rugby, so, I can't really say much about that. But what I found fascinating is you would think this great team, when they're bringing on a new player, would hire for technical competency. I'm a good rugby player. And they do, but really what they focus on are two things. The first one is character. What kind of person are you? What kind of individual are you? And secondly, humility. And I think a lot of times I've certainly had probably a whole lot more job interviews than many of your guests maybe, but you go into an interview and you think, boy, I better have all the answers to all the questions. And what the Australian, or excuse me, the New Zealand team is saying is, you don't have to have all the answers. We don't expect you to have all the answers. You individually can't have all the answers, but us collectively can figure it out. We'll come together as a team and we'll figure out what the issues are and we'll address those issues. But don't worry that, going into this interview, that you don't have all the answers. And I know I've done that in interviews. You go in and you're like, man, I'm scared to death because I don't know if I can answer all these questions. What they're saying is you don't have to answer those questions. So, it's just a different way of looking at business, a different way of looking at entrepreneurship and things like that, hey, I didn't have all the answers when I started my business. I didn't know about certain things, and I had to go research them and talk to people and, get on the internet and say, hey, I'm going to Google this, figure it out and stuff like that. So I think that's important for people to realize that you don't have to have all the answers. But what's important is to start. You just start from where you are, and you'll figure it out as you go along.
So basically, to get from what you were saying there, you're basically talking about how you should just get there, start off. You may not have all the answers right, but you're learning as you go. And, I really like how you were saying that because it all comes together. When you first said how we all do different things. We may change schools, we may change jobs, and like you say, that is part of the game of life, like how you said, so everything you're really saying is some good nuggets that you're really dropping in. And I like the wisdom that you're really bringing to this podcast, So with motivational speaking, did that really kick in when you were doing entrepreneurship, or was that just something that came natural?
Well, that was probably that started in 2019, which for me, for all of us was right in the middle of the pandemic. So it probably wasn't my best business decision. And so I had to figure it out. I'm like, well, this isn't working because people aren't hiring motivational speakers to come to groups and talk because there were no groups to come to. So I had to figure out how to use that in a different format. And so I started being a guest on podcasts. And, I was like, I didn't really know anything. Somebody reached out to me actually and said, hey, would you be a guest on my podcast? And I was like, it's a podcast. How does this work? And what do you need me to do? And I remember the first time that I was on a podcast, I was so nervous and I had all these notes and everything like that. And I was terrible. It was a terrible interview because it didn't flow. It wasn't conversational and things like that. And so I had to learn and I had to adapt and I had to, I've gotten to the point now where I've probably been fortunate enough to be a guest on probably 400 podcasts from all over the world, have met some amazing people. I have yet to have a bad experience on a podcast. I mean, and like I said, I've been on interviews from people from, Africa to the Middle East to South America to New Zealand to everywhere. And I've just met great people. So for me, it's been a way to kind of hone my message in a different way other than motivational speaking, which is starting to open up a little bit now. I've got a few events coming up where I'm going to speak, but podcasting was just another way of being able to get my message out there and see who I could help.
By writing down these notes, because you're really giving some great wisdom. This really revolves around networking, because you weren't really mentioning that yet, but that was really revolving around networking, learning, and then seeing all people now speaking, and then like how you said with motivational speaking, it's really revolving because you can revolve your business around that. You can revolve everything around that. Because nowadays we are seeing so many people, especially in my age limit around the youth, really be on social media and become these influencers or these stars or the skills they're good at. And, this digital media, this podcast, motivational speaking, it really, really is a good thing, because it can get you out there and really get your message out there, like you said. So basically with that, just really, really great nuggets. Book, you have books. But so far, how has the book went?
It's gone very well. This is the first book that I've had published, and it's really a book that was born out of two conversations that I had. One was with a former basketball player that I had coached when I lived in Texas, and she and her fiance had moved to Colorado where my wife and I live, and we had dinner with them one night. And I remember saying to her, I'm really excited that you're living close because I can watch you find and live your purpose. And she got real quiet for a while, and she kind of looked at me, and she's like, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents, and then living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man in college who reached out to me on social media and asked me what I thought were the most important things that he should learn to not just be successful in his job or in business, but to be successful in life overall. And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. Not that those aren't important. They are. They're incredibly important. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. And so I took some time and I wrote some notes, and eventually I had these 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles. And I sent them to him. And then I kind of stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So I sat down at the computer and basically started to build stories underneath each of these principles. And that's how the book came to be. And, so you write a book. Okay, big deal. There are 800 books published in the United States every single day. I mean, some of them are ridiculous. Somebody writes a book about walking their dog. I guess, that's important to them. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper. Did I have anything here? And I remember I had an 87-year-old man who bought the book, read it. I had no idea who this person was. And then he reached out to me on my website and he said, if I would have had these principles when I was younger, I would have had a much better life. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe, things are gonna pick up. And they did. And it's been great, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's always good for me as an author because I can, there's 10 principles, and the principles are not in any order. Number 1 is not any more important than number 7, so to speak. But there's always one when somebody reads the book that resonates with them. It's like, oh, hey, number 4 was the one that really got me, or, number 8 was the one that really resonated with me. And that's fun for me as an author to see, different people and which principles resonate with them. So it was a lot of fun.
Really great, like how you said, go deeper with the person. And that's just true, You need to find your purpose. People has to find their purpose. They have to really go deeper with the person to give them more, advice and more things. Because if you just tell them the average thing, they'll just go ahead and go average, And it's really crucial, in the youth range that they need to, like people my age need to really understand that they can take advantage of their youth right now while they're young. Because if they don't take advantage of it, they may have regrets. Because right now, from like 13 to 20 years old, 25 maybe, this is the greatest chance to live because you can get your life successful, your life great. Some people are just out here just spending money, wasting money when they can just be saving the money and just save it to invest in like stocks, or maybe just save it to where you can grow things and do other things. So I like how you said, have deeper connections with people and understand, because you need to give out that advice because like you said, it's just crucial to really give out the advice. So yeah, with the basketball thing, and the coaching and the squad, and what really got you into that? Like speak about the coaching first, and then you can speak with the SWAT teams and things. What really got you into those?
So as I mentioned, I was, I started basketball when I was 9 years old and played all the way up through college. And I was very fortunate. When I started playing at 9 years old, I happened to be, just by luck, I happened to be on the team with the son of the assistant coach of Ohio State University. And so I got access to, basketball camps and things like that. And then as I got better, you can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall. And so over the course of my high school days, I played against Isaiah Thomas, who went on to play at Indiana and won a national championship there, played for the Detroit Pistons in the NBA, won a couple NBA championships. I played against Michael Jordan when I was at the Citadel in 1982. It was Michael Jordan's freshman year in college, and it was the same year that North Carolina won the national championship. And then the following night, if this was a Friday-Saturday tournament, I played against North Carolina State and Jim Valvano, who the following year in 1983 won the national championship. So I was lucky enough to play against two national championship teams over the course of one weekend. And kind of a funny story, an aside, is my younger brother, the one I explained that pitched at Notre Dame, he's a basketball coach in Chicago.
Wow.
And he coached Michael Jordan's two sons. And he always tells the story. He said, one day I'm at practice and I'm teaching the players a play. And he said, I look up and nobody's paying attention to me at all. And he said, so I look over at the door where, people come into the gym, and Michael Jordan had come into the gym just as a dad. He was there to pick up his kids after, basketball practice and take them home. And so my brother looked at him and said, hey, Michael, would you mind stepping out in the hall for a minute? You're a little bit of a distraction to the players. And Jordan and his wife were incredibly great people. I mean, they didn't try to micro coach my brother. They opened themselves up. They were just great people. And so Jordan was like, sure, coach, no problem. I'll wait out here until practice is over. And my brother thought, gee, I'm probably the only coach in the history of basketball that's ever kicked Michael Jordan out of practice. So he talks about that. And so, when I had the opportunity, my wife and I have one child who's a daughter, and my daughter got my height.
Oh, wow.
She also got an NBA 3-point shot. So, I mean, she has an unbelievably great outside shot. And so when she started to grow, and she got my height as well, she's 6'2", she was looking, started to develop in high school, and the school she was at really didn't have good coaching. So it was an opportunity for me to, one, coach my daughter, and then secondly, to help, the other players develop and things like that. So that was really the reason I got into coaching. I did it for 5 or 6 years. It was a lot of fun. So that was interesting. In terms of SWAT, I wanted to be on the SWAT team because I wanted to be part of the best, and SWAT gets the best training. They get the best equipment. And it was just an opportunity. They had an opening, and I applied, and I got accepted and became a hostage negotiator, trying to get people out who were either barricaded themselves or who were holding hostages and things like that. So it was a lot of fun, something I learned a lot about. I learned a lot about listening from being a SWAT negotiator. I learned the importance of silence.
Most definitely.
That we don't like silence as human beings when we're having a conversation. We want to fill it. But as negotiators, we just used to let it sit there, and that way the other person, the bad guy, start talking.
I know by reading this bio, you said that you had dealt with cancer, right? Am I not correct?
You are correct. 2012.
Yes, sir.
I'll try to give you the condensed version of my cancer story. So 2012, I'm a basketball coach in Texas, and I have a callus break open on the bottom of my foot right below my third toe. And initially, I didn't think much of it. I'm a coach. I'm on my feet a lot. So I didn't think much of it at all. And then after a couple of weeks of it not healing, I went to see a podiatrist, a foot doctor friend of mine. And he took an x-ray and he said, Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there and I can cut it out. And he did. And he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sack with some white fat in it. No dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But he sent it off to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call from him. And as I said, he was a friend. So the more difficulty he was having explaining to me what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming, until kind of he hit me right between the eyes. And he said, Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen this form of cancer. You have a rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And I recommend that you go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston and be treated. And so I did. And I had the bottom of my foot excised, cut out, and then I had all the lymph nodes in my groin removed as well. And then when I healed, my doctor put me on a drug called interferon to try to help keep the disease from coming back. The side of interferon was that I had severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And again, once a cure, it was just a way, as my doctor said, to try to kick the can down the road. In 2017, I had to stop the interferon because it became very toxic to my body. And as soon as I stopped it, literally the cancer came back in the exact same spot on my foot where it had presented originally 5 years earlier. 2018, I had my left foot amputated because of the cancer. 2019, the disease worked its way up my leg into my shin, and I had 2 more surgeries. And then in 2020, I had an undiagnosed tumor kind of in my ankle area that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And my only recourse right in the middle of the pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And then I also found out I had tumors in my lungs, and I am still being treated for those right now. And I know that sounds like a very ugly and dark story, and it is, and it has been.
Like you said, with cancer, it's really, really a dangerous thing. And, for me, I'm a big fan of Chadwick Boseman because I love Black Panther. I believe you know what that is. And he died from colon cancer. I have a great-grandmother who recently died of August from pancreatic cancer, I think it was. I forgot which one it was. And I think that's the one. So, yeah, cancer is very scary. So, I'm glad that you taught your experience and how you said it made you a better person. And, just explain how it really did make you a better person.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point about, awareness, of cancer. If you notice something in your body, I don't care if you're, 14 years old or you're 44 years old. If you notice something, go to a doctor and get it checked out, because it is, if you catch cancer early, 99% of the cancers can be either cured or you can live a very long life with the disease. But it's the people that are afraid, and I understand why they're afraid. I totally get it. It's the people that are afraid and think that if I ignore it, then it's going to go away. Well, it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse. So if you notice something in your body that, is uncomfortable, go to your doctor. Seek professional help. It doesn't make you, any less of a man or any tougher or anything like that. It really is just being smart with your body. So I guess I would say that because I think you make a good point. We're all going to die at some point in time, but, we want to die kind of on our terms, not like, hey, I got cancer and I didn't do anything about it, and now I'm going to suffer terribly and eventually die anyway. So I'll leave that where it is. I guess one of the ways cancer has made me a better person is this. We're all going to experience pain in our lives. And it doesn't have to be cancer pain. It doesn't even have to be an illness. It could be as simple as you flunk a test at school, or you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you don't get a promotion at work that you think you deserve. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, suffering is optional. Suffering is what you do with that pain. Do you use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want other people to feel sorry for you? Life is about choices. Life doesn't owe you a thing, and so sitting back and saying, oh, woe is me. Okay, woe is you. And guess what? Everybody else has got to live their life. And I'm sorry you're feeling bad, but what are you going to do with that? And one of the things that I've learned, or I guess 4 things that I've learned over this cancer journey, what I call my 4 truths. And I'll give them to you. I have them on a Post-it note right here on my desk that I see multiple times every day. And they're just one sentence each. So here's the first one. You need to control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. And when I was in high school playing basketball, I had 3 knee surgeries. And I remember when I went back playing, my mind kept putting all this negative garbage into my thoughts. Things like, hey, you had these surgeries, you're probably a step slower, and college coaches aren't going to be interested in recruiting you. So, you might as well give it up. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm still playing at an elite level and coaches are still contacting me about playing for their college or university. So I had to change that narrative. I had to put something positive into my brain. And if you think about it, our brains can hold one thought at a time. Why would you want to make that a negative thought? I don't understand why we always go to the negative. So try to be positive, try to control your brain. That's the first one. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger individual. Our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now is good. Don't mess with it. Things are fine right now. The problem with that is the only way we can grow, the only way we can get better is if we step outside that comfort zone and we do things that make us uncomfortable. And I try to do this myself every day. So I'll recommend this to you and your audience. Try to do one thing every day that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that scares you, that is potentially embarrassing. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be something small like, hey, I'm going to get up an hour early today, or, I'm going to, supposedly cold showers are really good for the body. So I'm going to take a cold shower today or whatever. I don't like going to the dentist. The other day I picked up the phone and I made my 6-month appointment to have my teeth cleaned. And I didn't like that. That was uncomfortable for me. But do something small every day that makes you uncomfortable. Because if you do that, when the big things in life hit us, and they hit us all, you mentioned, your great-grandmother died and things like that. When people die or, you lose your job or you don't get into a school where you want to go or something like that, then you're going to be much more resilient to handle that. So that's number 2. Number 3 is what we leave behind is what we weave in the hearts of other people. And that to me is more of a legacy truth. I don't care what stage you are in your life, whether you're young, you're middle-aged, you're old, whatever. I think it's important for us to think about the end game in our life. What are people going to say about you at your funeral? What do you want them to say about you at your funeral? And when I found out I was having my leg amputated and I had these tumors in my lungs, I went with my wife to the church and to the mortuary and to the cemetery, and I planned my funeral. And I got a lot of brushback from people. It's like, don't you think that's kind of a defeatist attitude? And I was like, well, last time I checked, I think we're all going to die. I mean, nobody's working on a cure for life right now. Everybody dies, but not everybody really lives. And years ago, I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb that goes like this. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. So that's number 3. And then number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And the way I look at that is this. Someday my pain is going to end. It may end through surgery. It may end through medication. Quite frankly, it may end when I die.
It was really, really good. I really like what you're saying, Mr. Tucker. I love the whole, you're just so much wisdom, man. I really love people when they can really explore and get deeper into topics, because what you said earlier is just confirmation. You are just so deep into these topics, and I really like how you're doing what you're doing. And, back to what you were saying about embracing the pain and, just living your legacy, that is so true, because people have to realize that your legacy does matter. For us as motivational speakers, we want to be able to bring a movement or bring a perception, I should just say, to people in a positive way, and just really, let them know that when we're, God forbid, I'm just saying, but eventually the day will come when we both die. Other people may die. They may see how they were, when they were alive. So I really liked everything that you said. Everything that you said was really like a step by step, because it was like you were really speaking to everyone. So anyone who's looking at this, hopefully you got some great, great diamonds and nuggets from this, because what you said, Mr. Tucker, was just so self-explanatory that the advanced and the non-advanced can notice, How was your relationship with God?
My relationship, I talk about a lot of what's gotten me through cancer, and I talk about my 3 F's, which are faith, family, and friends. And, I told, the story. people always ask me, who do you blame? And we're great as a society of wanting to blame. We'll start down the road towards our goals, and then we'll butt up against an impediment, and we'll be like, oh, no, I got to stop. I got to quit. But when we do that, we got to blame somebody. There's got to be somebody else we blame. Very few people take responsibility for their own success and happiness. So I've had people ask me, who do you blame because you got cancer? I kind of look at them like, who do I blame? I don't blame anybody. Well, you must blame God. And I'm like, no. I sort of joke about it. I'm like, I don't think God got up on a Tuesday morning, checked his to-do list and said, hey, Terry Tucker's going to get cancer today. I don't think God did that at all. But I think what God has done for me is given me the resources, given me, the strength to go on. Because I'll be honest with you, Brendan, when I was on those 5 years of interferon, I was so sick, and I was so sick of being sick that I literally prayed to die. I just was like, God, please get me out of this ugliness, this pain, this throwing up, this shaking. I mean, you've had the flu. We all have. What does that feel like? Man. Imagine that 2 or 3 days every week, and that when you get through it this week, it's going to happen next week, and it's going to happen the following week. And I prayed to die, but God didn't. He obviously didn't kill me. We have the flu. What do we want to do? We just want to lay on the couch, or we just want to lay in bed and just lay there because we feel physically so lousy. We feel just, and so you can only take so much of that. I mean, I think, we talk about motivation and moving forward and all that kind of stuff, but everybody has a breaking point. Everybody has a point where I don't care how tough you are, how strong you are, how much faith you have, there's going to be a breaking point where you just can't do it anymore. And I guess I got to my breaking point where I was just like, look, God, I am so sick of being sick. Please just take me out of this. And he didn't. But what he did do was, I'll give you the strength to keep going. And that I'm incredibly grateful for that. I remember, the other F I talk about is my family. And when I had my leg amputated, my doctor wanted to start me on chemotherapy for the tumors in my lungs. And I kind of looked at him like, well, is it going to save my life? And he was like, probably not, but it might buy you some more time. And I was like, well, I don't think I want to do that. Why, if the outcome is going to be the same, why do I want to go through all that ugliness and misery? But I said, I'll go home and talk to my family. And as I mentioned, it's just my wife and daughter and I. So I go home and I start telling them what's going on. And my daughter's immediately like, all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's 3 of us. What do you mean we need a meeting? So we all end up sitting around the kitchen table and telling our different perspectives of chemotherapy. And then my daughter's like, okay, let's take a vote. How many people want dad to have chemotherapy? And my wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, what? Am I being outvoted here for something I don't want to do? And the answer was yes. But what I remembered was back when I was in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we loved the most to class. And as we were learning to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph because he reasoned you will fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I ended up taking chemotherapy, not because I wanted to, but because I loved my family more than I loved myself. And I think that was God saying, you know what? Hey, I want you to do this. Your family wants you to do this. And if you do this, you're going to live long enough to now I'm on a clinical trial drug that still probably won't save my life. But I probably should have been dead 2 years ago had I not taken chemotherapy. But I'm still here. And now I get to talk to nice people like you and, maybe make a difference in the lives of the members of your audience. So God's got a plan.
Yesterday, I was watching a movie on Netflix with my mother, and I was talking about how some people mature from trauma. Some people get, like how you said, get more resilient from trauma. And, for example, like how you said with cancer, that's just the truth. People may need to go through traumas, like you say, to do things. People may need to go through things, and sometimes the devil may come in and barge in, but we have to know that that demon isn't going to win. It's God and us who are going to win. So I love what you were saying there. And what advice could you really give to people who are dealing with trauma?
I guess I would say keep going. And I can say that from this perspective. Two quick stories. So I read an article about a study that was done at Johns Hopkins University here in the United States back in the 1950s. So it's been quite a while. But it was a very simple study. And trust me, hang with me on this because it's going to sound kind of goofy in the beginning. But it was this professor did a very simple experiment. He took rats and he put rats in a tank of water that was over their head. And he wanted to see how long the rats could tread water. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just before the rats were getting ready to sink and to drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Think about that. First time, 15 minutes. That's all I can do. I'm going to sink and I'm going to die. Second time, 60 hours, which said to me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. We have to believe that what we're doing is going to lead us to a better life, or the way things are now are at some point in time down the road going to get better for us. So that's number one. And then number two, just how much more our physical bodies can handle. I mean, a lot of the impediments that we come up against in life are impediments that we impose on ourselves, that we put there ourselves. So your body can do so much more. So people that, have been through trauma or are facing trauma, understand that your body can handle a whole lot more, a lot of times a whole lot more than your mind can handle. And the second story that kind of dovetails with that is I have a friend of mine who's a former Navy SEAL, some of the toughest men in the world and toughest military people in the world. And the SEALs talk about their 40% rule, which basically says if you think you're at the end of your rope and you can't go on anymore, that you're only at 40% of your maximum and you still have another 60% left to give to yourself. So for people, as you say, that are, that are going through trauma or, have been through trauma and, are just depleted mentally and physically, realize that you have so much more to give to yourself and just keep going. Just put one foot in front of the other. And, a lot of times when I was doing interferon, when I was on that drug, I talked about, I've got to win the day. Well, sometimes winning the day is just, I got to get from the bed to the couch. That's all winning the day is. So don't think that winning the day has got to be this huge, grandiose thing that, I've got to do all this stuff. You don't. Sometimes it's just small steps that'll get you to your goal. It's sort of the old, tortoise and the hare story of, the really slow tortoise and the really fast rabbit. The rabbit gets distracted. The tortoise just keeps going and eventually gets there. I always kind of think of myself as the tortoise. I'll get there eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually I'll get there because I'll continue to move forward.
Shows the difference between the people that are productive versus the people that are not productive, because the people that are not productive tend to just rush things, get a process, or people who are pressured does things, or people who got the grades done, they rush it. Whereas the people who are productive, they take their time with the grades, they take their time with whatever situation they're dealing with. So I really love what you're saying here. And I know you were a marketing executive.
My first job after graduating from the Citadel was in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. And it was in their marketing department. And my passion, my purpose in life, I always felt was to be in law enforcement. My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And so he was in Chicago during Prohibition, when alcohol was outlawed in the United States, during the late 20s and early 30s, during the Great Depression. And then also when the gangs, Al Capone and these different gangs were shooting up the town. And he was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad always remembered the stories that his mom told about the knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son and come with us. Your husband's been shot. And so when I expressed an interest in going into law enforcement, my dad was like, oh, no. You're going to go to college. You're going to get a degree in business. You're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids. My dad had my whole life planned out, but it was the life that he wanted me to lead. And he wasn't doing that, to be mean. He was doing it out of love for me. So when I graduated from the Citadel, I had a choice. My dad was dying of cancer. I could say, hey, Dad, you know what? I'm going to go blaze my own trail. Sorry, you're dying. I got to do my thing. Or and this sort of makes more sense when you look at my resume, my first 2 jobs were in business. So I the other side of that coin was, out of love and respect for you, Dad, I will do what you want me to do. So I went and got that first job at Wendy's, and then I became a hospital administrator. And I sort of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away, and then I followed my own dreams. And, it was, I learned a lot in business, but it wasn't my passion, and I always tell, especially young people, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things that you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them. So if there's something that's really kind of getting you, I should do this, go ahead and do it. Even if you fail, even if you mess up, it's okay. As long as you learn, you're never a failure. You're never a failure. You may lose on the scoreboard, but you're not a loser until you start blaming other people or not taking responsibility, for the things that got you there. So those were the first 2 jobs. And then I guess the other job, the narcotics investigator. So I was an undercover drug cop. I was buying drugs on the streets. I was doing search warrants. I was using informants to go in and buy drugs for us. And then we were, hitting the house with a SWAT team and a search warrant and stuff like that. So that was, I initially started out working a beat, ran a beat, was in a marked car and in uniform as a police officer, and then transitioned to the drug unit, which was a lot more interesting. Well, I don't know if it was a lot more interesting. It was a lot more dangerous. Let's put it that way. I was shot at a couple times. Several of my colleagues had guns pulled on them and things like that. So it was a very interesting time, and hopefully we made a difference in some people's lives. There's sort of an old joke that says, when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So, I think what God kind of does is he puts people in our path, and they make suggestions to us. People were suggesting I write a book. People were suggesting I write a blog. And I was really kind of trying to distance myself from it. And I used to say, hey, a blog, I can barely turn my cell phone on in the morning. What do you mean start a blog? And when I did start my blog, it was 4 pages long. And honest to God, Brendan, this is the truth. It took me 4 months to do that because I had no idea what I was doing. People like you and my daughter and things like that, you understand technology. You use it to your advantage, to your benefit and things like that. It's not that I don't. It's just I don't understand it. So I had to spend a lot of time researching and kind of going back and saying, what does this mean? Wait a minute, I got to go research that. Oh, I can do this much. Oh, wait a minute, I'm stuck again. And so it literally took me 4 months to put this 4-page blog together when I know my daughter could have done it probably in 15 minutes, really. And I guess going back to what we were talking about before, I think this is important. A lot of times people think their purpose or their passion or their why has to be their job. It doesn't. Your job could be something over here that you do to pay the bills, but your purpose or your passion is to write or, to do digital media or to be a volunteer or an activist or whatever it is that's in your heart that you believe you should do. So don't feel that my job has to be, this passionate thing that I can't wait to do. But there should be something in all of our lives that when we get up in the morning, we can't wait to go do it. Whatever that passion is, whether it's sports, whether it's school, whatever it is, find that passion in your life and live it, because life is so short and tomorrow's not guaranteed, so find that passion. And so many people live a casual life. And as a result, their goals, their dreams, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living. So don't be one of those people. Don't be one of those people like, I'll get to it when I get to it. It may never come. And, the people that I've seen die, and I've seen a lot of people die as a police officer and as somebody who's been dealing with cancer for 10 years, the people that I've seen die, and I'm going to make a big generalization, what you and I would probably call peaceful deaths, seem to be the people who found their purpose in life and lived it. Whereas the people who go kicking and screaming, they want another month or another year on this earth, those seem to be the people that never did anything with their lives. I think we're all destined to live an uncommon and extraordinary life, but so many people just live common and typical lives. And then when they come to the end of their life, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I never did anything with my life. I want more time. Well, sorry, you don't get any more time. Money is a huge thing, and everybody is real. We got to have money. And I'll give you a story. It's not a true story. I don't think this ever happened, but it illustrates, I think, what's really important in life. Alexander the Great, probably the biggest megalomaniac probably a guy worse than Hitler in terms of number of people that he killed and, conquered. But Alexander the Great basically conquered the entire known world. And so there's a story that when Alexander the Great is dying, he calls his counselors together and he asks them to carry out his final 3 wishes. He says his first wish is he wants only his doctors to carry his coffin to the grave. The second wish is he wants the road to the cemetery paved with gold and silver and precious stones. And the third wish is that he wants his hands hanging outside his coffin. And one of his counselors kind of looks at him and says, you're Alexander the Great. You're the most powerful man in the world. Why do you have these kind of goofy wishes? And he says, well, let me tell you. He said, the first one, he said, I want my doctors to carry my coffin to the grave because I want people to realize that no doctor ever cures anything. They just help the body to cure itself. And so you need to be cognizant of the things you do to your body. The good, don't put the bad stuff in, only put the good stuff in. Eat good food, get sleep, have friends, all the kind of things that we know to be healthy. So that was number one. He said, number two, I've spent my entire life accumulating wealth and power and influence and riches, and yet none of that is coming with me beyond the grave. So I want people to realize that it's just sheer folly to basically go after riches just for riches' sake. So that was number two. And then number three, he said, I want people to understand with my hands hanging outside my coffin that I came into this world empty-handed and I pretty much leave it the same way. I know we all want to be important and powerful and influential and rich and all that kind of stuff. But that's all superficial stuff. None of that really matters. What matters is what's in your heart. What matters is following your passion. What matters is caring and serving your God and other people. And if you do that, you're going to have a fulfilled life. The people that spend their whole life, my wife and I have a very good friend who was at our wedding who was incredibly rich, lived in Manhattan in New York, worked on Wall Street, had multiple homes, had multiple cars, had all this kind of stuff. And about 5 years ago, he ended up committing suicide. He just wasn't happy with the material things in life. Now, I'm not telling you shouldn't go out there and get as much money as you're worth. You should. Whatever your worth is in life, you should make sure somebody pays you for it because your time and your understanding and your knowledge, that's worth something. And you shouldn't necessarily give it away for free unless you feel you want to do that. So I don't know if that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but everybody wants to be rich, but rich of the heart is a whole lot better than rich in the bank account. I'll leave you with one more story. I've always been a big fan of Westerns growing up. And, I'm going to name some television shows that you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. But my parents used to let me stay up and watch like Gunsmoke and Bonanza and Wild Wild West and stuff like that. 1993, the movie Tombstone came out. It was a huge blockbuster. It starred Val Kilmer as a man by the name of John Doc Holliday and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were two living, breathing human beings who actually walked on the face of the earth. They're not made-up characters for the movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much Doc Holliday was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt Earp had been a lawman his entire life. So these two men from entirely opposite backgrounds formed this very close and very tight friendship. And at the end of the movie, Doc Holliday is dying at a hospital in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from where I live. The real Doc Holliday died in that hospital, and he's buried in the Glenwood Springs Cemetery. And Wyatt at this point in his life is destitute. He has no money, he has no job, he has no prospects for a job. So every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time that way. And in this almost scene at the end of the movie, they're talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, you know, I was in love with my cousin when I was younger, but she joined a convent over the affair. But she's all that I ever wanted. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt kind of nonchalantly says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life. And get on with living yours. Brendan, you and I probably know people out there that are kind of sitting back and saying, well, when this happens, I'll have a normal life. When that happens, I'll have a successful life. When this happens, I'll have a significant life. I guess what I'd like to leave you and your audience with is this. Don't wait. Don't wait for life to come to you. Get out there, find the reason you were put on the face of this earth, and live that reason. Because if you do, I'm going to promise you two things in your life. And I know your audience is probably young and they probably could care less about what happens when they die. But at the end of your life, you're going to be a whole lot happier. And number two, you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
I really enjoyed your wisdom, Mr. Tucker. This is Terry Tucker. He is a motivational speaker. He has a website called Motivational Check. Please make sure to go check out his content. Go check out everything. Everything is in the link in the description down below. If you're watching this audio, if you're watching this video, it's all in the description below. So please, please, please make sure to like, share, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification button, and please go check out Mr. Terry Tucker. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Brendan, for having me.